Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in the book of Job, chapter 29. Job talks about how he longs for times gone by when he had an intimacy with the Lord. He had friendship with him. And God was protecting him and looking after him. God's light was so much in his life, he strolled through darkness. You know, that there was this intimate friendship that blessed my house. Now, this blessing wasn't material, it was spiritual. And he says, my path, it was like butter, okay, cream, and oil, streams of oil. Things were just going smooth, right? And then he goes on to verse 7. Because God blessed me, you know, I took my seat in the public square, the city gate. He's talking about being a person of influence in the public life. You know, young and old men would listen to me, honor me. And I think as people lament the loss of influence that the church has had in our society, maybe this is a passage to look to and to listen to. He goes on. He talks about how the chief men, the nobles, the elites who are used to listening to themselves talk, that they would hush themselves to listen to the advice of Job. And why? It said in verse 11, you know, that they spoke well of him, and whatever they saw, they commended him, and that he was blessed and approved because his words matched his actions and his actions matched his words. He talks about how he helped the poor, the orphans, the dying, the widows. He was helping the helpless. And they blessed him for this. And whereas one of his so-called wise guy friends accused him of being a privileged, unjust man, he speaks about the righteousness he has and that he's a right man, that he carries out justice. He stops wicked men from preying on others, breaks their fangs, right? He goes on in verse 15, eyes to the blind, feet to the lame, father to the needy, and took up the case of the stranger. And I think about how Jesus talks about how he will give sight to the blind, make the lame leap. He will give hope to the poor. And in the same way, Job is living this way. Why? Because God has blessed Job to be a blessing, and he's living faithfully with God. He says in verse 18, I thought I was going to die surrounded by my family in my own house, and that I'd have a large family. He talks about my roots and my branches, that, you know, that all the things that I had planted for the life of my family were going to continue to prosper. And I thought that, you know, my glory would never fade, that I'd never be powerless and humiliated and abandoned, right? He says, verse 21, again, people, listen to me, I was a man of influence. I lit up the room when I showed up, right? As he says in verse 24, you know, I smiled and I lit them up. And all of this, he's saying, I want to once again for God to bless me so I can be a blessing to others. He longs to be known by God and to be used by God again. Well, my friends, I think that's all we have for today. If you like what you're hearing, please like it, share it. And I pray that this is blessing you and understanding Scripture more deeply. Thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.